we'll get started. First of all, I want to thank you so much for coming to our first Rochester Expo. We're really excited to be in this geography. We've done this kind of a format many, many times in Indianapolis, but we're getting to know all of you better here, and we're grateful you're going to spend the day with us, I hope, all day. After here, we have some lunch. You want to be back on stage at noon for our CTO's presentation, Emerging Technologies. He'll give you all the good stuff that you're probably really here to talk about. I'm going to try to flip your brain a little bit and talk about something a little bit differently. So hopefully I don't bore you. This workforce. You know, I think it's probably safe to say that no matter who you are, and I know we have higher ed here, and we have some corporate, and we have a medical device company. We have a lot of people up here, nonprofit. But no matter what organization we hail from, we really have as our goal the desire to make our organizations more efficient, more productive, more prosperous, right? And when we do that, when we try to make our organizations more prosperous, what we're really doing is we're trying to empower the people that are in those organizations, right? Because when we empower them in ways that help them take their organization from some current state to some future state, then we really will have done what needs to happen to help our organization stay prosperous. And by the way, if there's any way we can measure what that future state change is, we really like that, right? Because it's enough to say, well, we want to make you better, but we really want to measurably try to improve an organization when we work with them. And it's because of the people in the organization that these people out here carefully and very methodically design their technology so that the people can work with it better, right? We take that into consideration. Because unless we empower the people, the organization will never move to that future state. And by the way, that's why, as a behavioral scientist, someone who studies human behavior, I'm particularly interested in how we do that, right? So when we talk, I gave you a sneak peek there, but when we talk about people using technology in any future state, we inevitably stumble upon a conversation about the 75 to 80 million people anywhere that were born between 1980 and 2001, right? The Millennials, as they're frequently referred to. And there have been a lot of generalizations made about these people. Perhaps you've watched a few. Oops. Oh, I'm afraid my audio didn't get plugged in. Oopsie. Let me see if somebody is here to help me. I think I lost my helper. I'm sorry. Well, that was a stereotypical approach to millennial engagement where they sort of talked about living in their parents' basement. And I'm going to step over here and see if I can find a helper really quickly. If you can find Josh or Mark, yeah, thank you, to help me plug in some audio, because I have a few other clips and I'd hate to lose them. I should have tested that. That was on me. That was not on my team. So when we talk about these millennials, though, and we've kind of standardized on a stereotype of them, and what this gentleman here is telling us is that almost every day you can read in a Time magazine or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal about some expert who has an opinion on what a millennial is. I don't know if we're accurate, right? I don't know if those conversations actually will bear out in 10 years from now. But we are interested in conversations like the one we're having here today are important because millennials already make up 50% of our workforce, right? They're already working with us side by side. And data suggests that by 2025, they're going to make up 75% of our workforce. And so the bottom line, the millennial, these younger people in our workforce are an exponentially increasing factor in the equation that will define how prosperous our organizations are. Now that's assuming we can attract and retain them in the first place. Because you've probably read a little bit about their tendency to job hop. Now some social scientists do say that this tendency will change once they start having babies and mortgages, because apparently the baby boomers job hopped a lot too, but it's just that they started having babies and mortgages a lot sooner than we did, or than the millennials are. I don't know, we'll see. But honestly, the job hopping is not probably the most troubling factor that we have when it comes to organizational. Thank you very much for helping me get Josh. More disturbing, really, is the current research related to how disengaged this particular generation is when they are working in our organizations, right? It's reported that 55% report not feeling engaged with their organization, and that beats every other generation in the research, by the way. So why does that matter? Why should that be troubling? Well, certainly, disengagement could lead to job hopping, right? But disengagement leads to a lot of other negative outcomes as well. Employee engagement, if we're going to define it or think about it in a sort of real terms, it's that emotional commitment an employee gives to his or her organization, right? And if you think about when you're emotionally committed to something, you do what? You give it more effort, more thought, more time, more attention. And we refer to this sometimes as discretionary effort, because discretionary effort is sort of going above and beyond, doing what you don't necessarily have to do, and engaged employees tend to do that. And so that's why studies do show this strong correlation between employee engagement and really many desirable business outcomes. Outcomes related to service and quality and safety, absenteeism, certainly retention, and a lot of financial performance outcomes. And so that's why we think it's important for those of us committed to supporting organizations, helping them become prosperous, why we have to talk about millennial engagement. You know, if you think about it, they really are our internal clients, right? We need them. And so we need to know what we can learn from them by watching them, by observing them, by thinking about them, by looking at the research, and then thinking about what we may proactively need to change about our organizations. And that's really what we're here to do today. And actually, by the way, since we're at a technology expo, it'll be fun to think about how technology might empower some of those changes. You know, I don't know, maybe they are just overly entitled and lazy unless they're chasing Pokemons, which is what the TED speaker spoke of. But I'd actually like to suggest that some of their disengagement is on us, right? Specifically, it might be related to some of the communication habits that many of our organizations embrace. I'm going to suggest that many organizations are really missing the mark when it comes to this generation and the way we communicate with it. I also think, by the way, the good news is there are some really innovative approaches that involve technology that might help us strengthen these communication strategies that we have, right? That might help us better engage our younger colleagues. And then that's really what the next 25 minutes are about, okay? So that's what I hope to share with you. So if we talk about communication and communication habits, you know, really, is there anything more fundamental to people than communicating? I mean, we are social creatures, whether we like to admit it or not. In my field, the DSM-5, it is full of diagnoses that reflect ineffective interpersonal skills, all right? Poor communication rarely ends well for any human. That's true personally, and by the way, it's true for organizations as well. Because, see, we don't always think about it this way, but organizations, much like people, have typical ways of communicating, typical ways of sharing information, of problem solving, of connecting among their teams, of hearing directives from leadership, even really talking with their clients and customers. And intuition would tell us that it's probably good for people within organizations to communicate well, but guess what? Research supports that. In fact, organizations with measurably effective internal communication strategies are 5 times more likely to report engaged employees. Really robust finding. And we've already established that engagement is good for all kinds of strong organizational, prosperous financial outcome, right? Additionally, people have different ways they like to acquire information, right? And I'm inviting you to consider how that might work with millennials, right? How do millennials acquire information? There's been a piece of technology touching their fingertips for basically their entire life, right? We can't dismiss that. And the information they're acquiring from this device is often customized for them, right? Tailored for them. Or if it's not, it immediately can be adjusted to be so. Baby boomers, they probably would have preferred to acquire information in a customized, personalized fashion too, right, when they were in their 20s, but it really just wasn't an option, right? We had to page through things, card catalogs, phone books, right, TV guides, encyclopedias. You know, it never occurred to baby boomers to want that kind of customized attention, right? But, you know, the millennials, it does occur to them because it's all they have ever known, right? In fact, millennials are required to do even less searching because information now is pushed to them, right? Customized, tailored information is pushed to them. And by the way, a lot of what gets pushed to them is not in the form of words. And Josh, this is where I'd like to show a video. Am I good? Okay, thanks. Thank you for helping me.
The only books we have ever read completely are the Harry Potter novels, and our definition of a fulfilled lifestyle consists largely of Netflix and chilling. Now, is this stereotype 100% accurate? Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I know. Many millennials do read books, so I'm not trying to offend anybody here, but there is no arguing that if you put a millennial in their historical context as it relates to acquiring information, it is very richly steeped in imagery, in cinematography, in video. And so when we're interacting with our younger colleagues in our organizations, how do we primarily communicate with them? Anyone know the percentage of us that use email? Well over 90%. Our primary form of communication is email. And that's why I'm saying organizational communication often misses the mark. You know, and it's funny, when I've spoken before and I talk about missing the mark, people assume I'm going to talk about content because content is what? King. That's what we've all been taught. Content matters the most. And so there's a tendency to blame the content when you say this messaging missed the mark. What do? We add some zip to the words. We change our font. Maybe we embed a picture. Maybe we do an infographic, right? Because that'll help. And honestly, I'm not saying any of that is bad. It's probably important to do all of that. But what I'm saying is it's really common to think about being creative with our content. It's a lot less common for us to be creative with the method of distribution of that content. And I think we need to think about that a little more. And actually, so does this guy.
To be a great leader in the future, you must be able to reach the hearts and minds of communication. You must take it to an entirely different level. People would rather go watch a movie than go to a meeting. They'd rather see a quick little clip and be emotionally pulled in than read a newsletter. That's our future.
You know, he's not the only one talking that way. 96% of the companies believe that video helps improve communication. Right? People see tremendous value in using video for onboarding, for marketing, for executive briefings, for recruitment, for training, any form of communication. Okay, so if I say that, then how do you make video a part of your organizational strategy? Okay, it's easy to say it's important, but how do you actually accomplish that? Well, honestly, because we had some really forward-thinking clients, I like to say we think of all this, but often we don't. We partner with clients that have great ideas, and then we help them make it so. Well, because of that, Sensory created a rather unique offering. It's a rather unique service offering. Now, we've offered Adopt for decades, right? Adopt attaches a certified technician with a client for days, weeks, hours, months, years, whatever. It could be full-time, part-time. It could be break-fix. It can be meeting management. It could be on-site. It could be remote monitoring. It's an increasingly popular Sensory service. More recently, however, we've seen the need for a video Adopt service because it's mind-blowingly less expensive to use our video Adopt than it is to use outside production teams. And even more so, clients tell us that when our clients live in their environment and they hear directives and they pick up on cultural nuances and they learn what the goals are and what really matters, and they have the skill to translate all that into video, it's a very seamless, fast situation that allows video on demand at a very low cost point. We've also seen that this video strategy is good for something we're finding our clients talking a lot more about, which is knowledge transfer. You know, as we have multiple generations within an organization, how do you get your senior employees before they choose to retire to convey the information to younger clients that probably aren't going to go on the server and read a manual that talks about do this and don't do that? So we're finding knowledge transfer, video adopt meeting the need for knowledge transfer as well. Okay, so now you have a video strategy, you have a way to get your video. What do you do with your videos? Right? You want to make them easily to search, right? Corporate YouTube may or may not be appropriate for all of us, right? It lacks a lot of security. It's hard to get the metrics you want often off of corporate YouTube. And plus you're competing with like 575,000 hours of video every day. And I don't know about you, but we don't really like it when our competitors populate on the right side of our YouTube, right? That's not appealing to us. So again, recognizing this need, Sensory created a cloud-based service called Pivotal. And what it allows you to do is create, manage, and distribute video, a really robust platform, or it can be very streamlined. Again, we sell it as a subscription service. You can learn all about it on the floor if you're interested in it. But it allows people to incorporate a video strategy and then manage it effectively into perpetuity. All right, so it's a really nice way to embellish a video strategy. So bottom line, what I'm saying here is I invite you to consider incorporating a video strategy into your communication plan, and feel free to, talk with any of us later if you want to. Okay, so I've told you that video might be a nice vehicle for communication, right? It's a strong method for distribution of content because it presents stories really that are better retained by everyone, by the way. And also it's definitely a vehicle that's more comfortably received from some of our younger colleagues. So video as a vehicle, good. But let's circle back a little and talk about the content, right? What about the content that you are sharing? Because content does matter, and it probably still is king. I just invite you to remember both sides of the story. So if I were to say what types of stories resonate when communicating with millennials, what matters to them as it relates to engagement from an employer's perspective? Well, from exit interviews and surveys, by the way, we know compensation matters to them too, all right, just like it did to every other generation. It's their second and third choices, however, that are kind of interesting. Their second choice is having their passions used to the fullest, 53%. Their third is believing in the company's mission and purpose, 20%. In fact, over half of the millennials are willing to take 15% pay cut to work at a company that matches their ideals. Hold that thought a second. I want to tell you another story, all right? Some really intriguing research that McKinsey did. I think I went backwards. That McKinsey did. Scott Keller, Carol Aiken, they reported on some research related to corporate communication, specifically around change management. They found that there are two primary ways that organizational leadership communicate their vision, right? Number one, if we don't do this, we will lose our competitive edge because our advantage is being eroded by the competition, right? We must beat our competition. That's one primary way they talk to their constituents, their colleagues. The second primary way corporate leadership speaks is we're performing below industry standard. And therefore, we have to do this to survive, right? We have to become an industry leader. So over 90% of the time, leaders tell one of these two stories to propel their vision. That is 90% of the time, their message centers around either beating the competition or becoming an industry leader. Okay, I actually believe that. Now, research shows that there are these two themes that I just mentioned here create significant energy for employees to be inspired to put forth extra effort in roughly 20% of the workforce. So think of that. The most common two types of communication within organizations designed to inspire effort for change, right, to propel vision, totally miss the mark in 80% of the workforce. Yikes. It just seems that people who are charged with creating the vision may not have the same kind of motivating factors as those who execute it do. In fact, the research shows that there are at least 4 other themes that matter when trying to engage people. Okay, there's the need to communicate on profit, absolutely, but also society and client and the team and how will this impact myself, my professional development, my growth. So what do we do with this research? Well, if we want our content, our information, our message to be noticed, if we want to convey the information in a way that produces discretionary effort, that drives employee engagement, I'm suggesting the message needs to be told different ways, right? Through multiple lenses, if you will. And mind you, McKinsey's research was not done on millennials, all right? If it had been, we might think it's even missed the mark on more of them. Because it's not that millennials are not concerned about profit, but 64% say that it's a very high priority for them to make the world a better place. Okay, so how do organizations do this? How do they tell their story through multiple lenses? Targeted emails? Yeah, maybe, probably not. Bunch of different videos, okay, that could be exhausting and time-consuming. I'm not sure that's the best way, but possibly. Here's where I invite you to break a common stereotype of a second type of technology. All right, I've talked a lot about video. Now I want to introduce digital signage. There's a tendency for a lot of us to view digital signage as these glitzy posters on the wall, primarily designed for retail, right? But network displays, I think, have really unique potential, maybe underappreciated potential, to really drive employee engagement. Specifically, digital signage can reach people who are easily distracted, people who expect to acquire information in different ways, right, other than email, who like the opportunity to acquire information through text and imagery and video, who prefer information that gets pushed at them rather than to have to go pull information from some location. In other words, it may be very well suited for millennials. And by the way, today's digital signage can be sold as a service, which allows organizations to incorporate it with minimal upfront cost. It's exceptionally easy to scale for growth. You just have a display, you have a player, you attach it to the back, and you turn the switch. It calls to the mothership in the cloud, and it's networked. All right? It's very easy to add enhanced displays to pervasively cover some organization. And in fact, you could often use your existing displays, by the way. You don't have to buy special displays. Sometimes you just have to get the player. And we, as a service, we offer those on a monthly fee. Content is easily refreshed, really. You can manage with simple admin control from any device that's connected to the internet, including your phone, right? So you can change content on the fly, anyone can. But here's the unique perspective. Here's why I'm sharing it today. You can tell one message from multiple perspectives in one view. All right, so think of that. If you use a template and you have different zones of content, you can map, if you want to be this anal about research, but you could map McKinsey's 5 different perspectives in one view, right? You could tell the impact of your business objective from the perspective of profit generation, from the perspective of client relationship, from the perspective of what it does for your community, right? And if you didn't want to do it at one view, you could certainly cycle through a couple slides, but it's totally customizable. And millennials are kind of unique as a generation in that they like to do something called democratized communication. And what we mean by that is they like a lot of people involved in the process, all right? So they want to co-create their content. Social media probably fuels that desire, probably created it. But while we often recognize how social media allows you to put information out very quickly, for good or for bad, we don't always recognize how social media has actually changed the nature of what content is. Think about it. Content isn't just a paragraph or just an image or just a pre-recorded video, the way I was always thinking about content. But today, content actually kind of evolves, right? Through the use of tweeting and blogs and even streaming. So that form of content, which is very natural for millennials to think about, isn't necessarily natural for a lot of the organizations, but it's well executed through network digital signage. All right, you have the opportunity to do that democratized communication through a medium such as this. And again, it's a really natural way for millennials to communicate. Oh, further, if you were to add interactivity on this display, right, dynamic touch within your digital signage platform, well, then you really begin to create a very strong vehicle for messaging that much more closely mimics millennial expectations and the habits that they have. You know, and that's why we really discourage conversations when we talk to you, especially on the front end, about, ooh, how many displays do I need and where should they go? You know, it's because today's digital signage platforms are so robust. The conversation has to start with your business objective, right? And that's also why we sometimes refer to it as digital engagement rather than signage. Because most of your business objectives will somehow be empowered through the use of better communication and collaboration. So bottom line, as with what I said about video, it's good to talk with someone about adding a digital signage component to your communication strategy for your organization. And actually, the sooner you do that, the better, you know, in your planning process. Oh, by the way, today, many of our network displays can be integrated with mobile devices, with apps, all right? We know that mobile devices matter. They matter a lot for many of our workflows. People really like having their external brains with them. I mean, I do. Anytime I can't think of something, I know where I can find it. And I know a whole bunch is made about millennials and their devices, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert here, but this is a pretty good read. The best I can net it out is millennial brains have been physiologically and actually biochemically altered as compared with previous generations due to their behaviors and habits that they've acquired related to their mobile devices. My brain's probably been altered too, by the way, because we have malleable brains. But their brains have been altered during their formative years, right? The formative years of brain development. So some of you probably have read the reports about text arrival pings causing a release of dopamine and serotonin. I can't be the only Simon Sinek fan in the room, and he talked about this quite a bit as well. The exact connection between dopamine and addiction may not exactly have been represented accurately in this particular PowerPoint. Maybe you've read some of the blogs. He took a little heat for it. But I don't know. Whether it's habitual or whether it's addictive, I don't know. But we do know their devices matter a lot. And any communication strategy needs to support that understanding. So our meeting spaces, our collaborative spaces, they must be device agnostic, right? And that takes some prior thought. Again, a good reason to get a trusted technology partner on the front end of your project to just talk through what that might entail. So, final point I want to make about adjusting our communication strategies for better millennial engagement relates to this statistic. 79% say that if they have a boss, most of them don't want a boss, they want to be entrepreneurs, but 79% say if they have a boss, they want the boss to be a coach or a mentor. How could technology help with that form of millennial engagement? Well, today's video conferencing, especially the cloud-based solutions that are offered, make it really easy to offer frequent, personalized touches, little mentoring moments, no matter where you're physically located. In fact, one of the reasons our company moved to a 24-hour client solution center was to support that type of effort with video conferencing, right? Many of our clients just call our 24-hour service to test their video connection. Hey, can you hear me? Can you see me? Because they don't want to be embarrassed later when they have their regular call. We can train on virtual collaborative platforms. We monitor meetings. We monitor town halls. We support live streaming events. We can mute people when necessary, whatever's helpful, right? Very few companies offer that level of support, by the way, especially when it comes to video conferencing. But it really is something important to consider, because if you're trying to embrace a broad video conferencing platform within a company that maybe isn't comfortable with video conferencing or hasn't done much with it, think about that. You can totally offload the worry, the training, the stress of execution, the finger pointing between IT and the people in the boardroom, the software updates, the blah blahs. Wouldn't you rather have it a technology partner worry about that for you. We also have incorporated Wormholes. Okay, these are basically perpetual video conferencing opportunities so that we can display 24/7 any place on the globe. All right, so this again helps with engagement. It's the virtual equivalent of the old water cooler chats, right? So I can talk with my Chicago colleagues, ask them how the Chicago pizza tastes, and kind of live it vicariously. It's just a great way to offer frequent, casual, maybe mentoring moments. And I know a lot's made about millennials needing those frequent attaboys and attagirls, all right? We tease them about that a lot because they all got trophies when they were little. But the truth is, they do require more frequent validation of their activities, and not just from their bosses. All right, they've grown up with likes and emoticons from their peers too. It's part of the habit to give and receive frequent validation within their interactions, and it's a big part of how they relate with each other, how they communicate. And a neat way to mimic that particular social experience within an organization is through, again, apps that reward one another. I don't know if you've experienced any of these, but they can be really empowering. We use one called Chava. It's an app on my mobile device. I get a monthly allotment of points. I can get in here and touch and send 10 points to a colleague, maybe with a thank you note. And then the colleague can accumulate those points and purchase products and services. Okay? Now here's the deal. A lot of us who should be giving those points forget. Right? It's not top of mind, for example, myself. Maybe it's because I'm not a millennial. I don't know. But it's not on my radar. Yet it's important. It's important for many of my colleagues. So again, based on client demand and industry need, we created, with a partner, a solution that integrates the Chava app with our digital signage service. So if you see, much like down here where you might have a stock ticker tape, we scroll points from our app. All right? And so this monthly add-on digital signage service allows organizations to proudly promote those who earn points. And by the way, it's also a really constant, omnipresent reminder for me to give them, right? Because I walk by and I see that, and I'm like, oh, that's right, I should do that, all right? It goes both ways. All right, so if I were to summarize, I'm suggesting that we take a very honest look at our organizations and specifically how engaged our employees are within them. Because engagement is critical to organizational success, right? Well established in the research. And as there will continue to be significant impact of our millennial presence in tomorrow's workforce, their communication needs really can't be ignored. They just simply can't. And we know they're the least engaged, so we have to identify this potential challenge. And mind you, engagement matters for all generations. I know I'm kind of focusing on the younger colleagues, but engagement is important for all ages, young and old. And that's always been the case. But here's what's different. The sometimes 5 generations under one organizational roof now have noticeably different communication habits, and that's rather new, all right? While all of our brains are malleable and ever-changing, the millennial brains have been particularly influenced by their history with their technology. And therefore, so have their communication habits and the expectation for the way organizations communicate with them. It's unprecedented. Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know, it just is, all right? And it's a reality, and we need to face it. So given the positive correlation between communication and engagement, we just have to take a hard look at how we're communicating within our organization. Specifically, I'm suggesting we consider that growing percentage of the workforce and consider multiple methods of distribution, not just email, all right? For some of us to do that, it's going to be a little tweak. For some of us to do that, it's going to be a major overhaul, but we just have to look beyond email as our primary method of distribution of information. So toward that end, I'm suggesting we consider more video messaging, right? And then we set ourselves up for success by making video conferencing really simple, right? We also make the creation, the editing, the storage, and the retrieval of video. Through Pivotal, I mentioned, something like that kind of a service. We make that intuitive, right? And we make our storage professional. So we're not afraid to post it on a corporate YouTube where others, competition may populate. I'm suggesting we empower that use of video pervasively across that organization, and that we also become a little more creative, less stereotypical with the use of digital signage. That we turn our digital networks into digital engagement opportunities. And we can do that if we tell our stories different ways simultaneously so that our message can be received by more than 20% of our workforce, right? That we integrate some social engagement app opportunities through our mobile devices. And I guess if I just leave you with one thought, it would be to try to elevate your thinking about employee engagement through the use of more effective distribution of content, and make that a goal for 2018, at least to explore it. Think about it. Think about some of the things we've talked about here. Maybe one or two of them resonates, and then seek out a partner to help you flesh out some details. So again, I hope something resonated. I hope something made you want to hang out here for the rest of the day, and maybe I'll be here all afternoon. I'd love to talk with you if you have some other additional thoughts on this. I know it's kind of a different topic. And I also hope you're gaining a better idea of who Sensory Technology is. We specialize in technology solutions. They are, first and foremost, designed to empower your business objectives. Most typically, that happens around the use of stronger communication and collaboration. Our company roots are in AV integration. Lots of experience there with very sophisticated solutions. This is Daniel. He's just wrapping up the command and control center for the FBI and the Homeland Security when the Super Bowl came to Indianapolis. It's one of my very favorite pictures, and I always promised Daniel I would use it whenever I could. But I'd also like to say that Sensory Technology was really early within the industry to layer upon that AV integration some best-in-class cloud-based services. All right, so for video conferencing, for streaming, for digital signage, for video management, for video distribution, for collaboration. And we deploy all of those globally. We're particularly well known for our support. We nurture a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week client solution center where a live technician sits there with your engineering drawings. They can call them right up, often troubleshoot on the phone. And I mentioned our Adopt services, which are increasingly popular service. But for the record, we're really price competitive too. I mean, it sounds like we do all this amazing stuff, and we do. We like those kind of projects. But because we've had so much experience, we've been able to really kind of streamline in a cost-effective manner. So please, engage us in conversation, enjoy the day, go get some lunch, pop back up here by noon to hear our CTO talk on some emerging trends. I think you'll enjoy that conversation, and thank you for your kind attention.